already be aware of most of these, but I do find them very helpful for most people. Buyers mostly use a real estate agent when they're looking for a home. The reason for this is because the real estate agent has the tools and the time to locate that specific type of home for the buyer. In addition to that, a buyer really does not pay anything for that agent's services. It's included in the listing agreement of the home to pay whoever brings a buyer to the table anywhere between 2 and 3% of the sales price of the home. Regardless if you are a for sale by owner or not, a real estate agent bringing a buyer to the table will expect to be paid. Another item to be concerned with here is your buyer's financial capabilities. A good real estate agent will have their buyers pre-approved. However, there are a few words that you will hear: pre-qualification, pre-approved, or neither. And this is important because there is a difference. Pre-qualification is a simple process, and it takes into account very basic information regarding the buyer's financial status and gives them an amount for which they may qualify. This can be done strictly on a verbal basis or even over the internet. The pre-qualified amount is based solely on the information that the buyer provides. In most markets, pre-qualified buyers usually hold very little clout compared to a pre-approved buyer due to the fact that the information given during the pre-qualification process is not thoroughly investigated and therefore may be unreliable, where a pre-approved buyer is actually approved for a loan of a certain amount and a pre-qualified buyer is only told what they might be approved for. Now, this can come into play if you have a buyer saying that he's pre-qualified for a certain amount that covers the sales price of your home. Now, you take your home off the market, go into a contract with this person, and they're out shopping for loans. Unfortunately, they may come back and say, I can't get the loan. I can't get this much. You're going to say, you told me you were pre-qualified. Well, that's the difference. If they're pre-approved, you don't have as much to worry about. Pre-approval is much and a lot more concrete. Obviously, you have contracts to deal with when selling a home. It's one of those necessary evils, but when handled properly, it can be your best friend. You can protect yourself in several ways with the contract as long as it's written properly. The typical buy and sell real estate contract has approximately 14 pages. In addition to that, there's the lead paint disclosure. There are the seller's disclosures. There are also a few new issues coming into the market regarding if the property is in foreclosure at the time or if there may or may not have been methamphetamines produced at the home. Next is the negotiation process, which can be very grueling at times. There are several items that come into play that can change the negotiation process. You have appraisers, inspectors. You may want to have, if you're a buyer, you may want to get a survey done on the property lines to make sure there's no encroachments from the neighbor and to make sure you're not encroaching on your neighbor. What this can do is change these dates several times. I've been in a few transactions where the closing date is moved up sooner. It makes everyone happy. 3 days later, something new comes into play and it actually has to be set back 2 weeks. So as long as you have a very good understanding of the dates involved and what to expect, you should be okay. Next, I would like to speak with you about the pros and cons of selling a home on your own as a for sale by owner. Obviously, the best pro is that you're going to save money. Most of you may think you're going to save between 6 and 7%, which sometimes happens, but the majority of buyers do have a real estate agent, and that agent, like I said before, expects to be paid. The next pro is you can sell your home at your own pace. If you want to sell your home for $20,000 more than what it may be worth, you may leave it on the market for 10 months and somebody could come along, fall in love with it, and pay that much. And if you are in that kind of a testing area where you are not really serious about selling your home, that's the route to take and sell it on your own. You control everything that way. Now, one consequence that I've seen in my experience with for sale by owners is their method of arriving at a marketable sales price. Real estate brokers use live data from current market conditions. We can search the MLS. We can see homes that have closed and been sold. We can see what they were originally listed for versus what they were sold for. We can also look back into the past, several years, or typically only maybe 1 or 2 years, and we can adjust that closing price with the rate of appreciation. And hopefully we can come up with several comps to arrive at a marketable price. And you will hear that word quite a bit in this, comps, which obviously is a comparable home. And you'd be surprised what some people consider a comparable home. And it's all depending on how many similar homes are within 1 mile. Sometimes they have to reach out further. But your typical appraiser is going to look within a 1 mile radius of your home to look for comps. Something else to consider here is the liability of selling your home. You want to make sure that the condition of the home is properly represented to the buyer. A lot of that is covered in the seller's disclosure, which I mentioned before. It addresses several items, structural items, appliances, heating, hot water heater, plumbing, electrical. But there are a few things that you may not have thought of on that disclosure, and it does need to be disclosed to the buyer. If you have a flooding problem, that needs to be disclosed to that buyer. Because believe it or not, there have been cases where you sell a home and 1-2 years later, it comes back to haunt you. And advertising your home, if you're selling it on your own, you're obviously responsible for all the advertising. And when you are advertising, there are fair housing laws associated with that. There are protected classes, and there are certain words and phrases that you need to stay away from when advertising your home. Make sure you're not advertising to one specific type of familial status, religion, race, anything like that. Now, most people don't get offended very easily, but you would be surprised. There are a few that take offense to things that really don't seem that way. One more item here, exposure, which ties into that advertising. A real estate broker knows how to legally and effectively advertise your home. Now, like I said before, buyers use real estate brokers to help them acquire the home and find the home that they want to look at, but most real estate brokers don't drive around neighborhoods up and down streets looking for sale by owner signs. Sometimes they will look in the newspaper if the type of home that their buyers want is a little rare and they're looking for something specific, but that doesn't happen too often. The number one source for a buyer's agent is the multiple listing service and Realtor.com. The reasons why is because that is the largest source of inventory. You can easily search through several parameters and zero in on the exact type of home that you're looking for. Another consequence of selling a home on your own is the fact that you're probably going to need a hefty supply of aspirin in your house